Hey team, George here. Super excited to dive into psychological safety. And this week we're working on looking at learning about inclusion safety, one of the four stages within psychological safety. So, this is going to be a quick overview of the whole thing. We're going to chat about a lot of things at a real cursory top level, and then we're going to start diving into each of the stages each week. And psychological safety is the underpinning of high performing and innovative teams. You will not have a team that is high performing without it. You will not have a team that is innovative without it. So just think, if you have a team and you think they're innovative, there's no psychological safety there, they're not even halfway to being where they could be. So we want to create that environment, that culture where innovation and high performance is the norm. And that's what we do. That's what psychological safety does. We're going to focus on the work by Timothy Clark with the 4 stages of psychological safety, the studies and book by Amy Edmondson, and Google and Project Aristotle from Google as well. So that's going to be kind of our main focus, but we also have to have a few other elements that create high performing teams. Psychological safety is by far number one. Without it, you won't have a high performing team or an innovative team. Individuals will outperform teams that lack psychological safety, believe it or not. So the goal is to take away actionable strategies and apply them to your team immediately. So this is an overview. We're going to dive into inclusion safety and give some specific behaviors and actions that you can take within your team, whether you're a leader of the team or a team member within there, to make things start moving in this direction. And keep in mind that every team is different. So the important part about our class is that we share what's going on, because not every team operates the same way. So we want to know, hey, this is our overall, this is how we set it up, and this is working, this isn't working. So I'm excited to see what's working, what's not working within your teams, and even just have some collegial conversation about what we can even do better within our teams. And then, what is psychological safety? This is one of my favorite sayings: no bad teams, only bad leaders. And you've seen my video before that says that as well: no bad teams, only bad leaders. Well, if the leader is responsible for creating the culture on the team, and if that culture, if that environment is not there, if the leader does not actively engage in creating that environment, guess what? Luck and happenstance will create that environment. Now, unless there are some team members who kind of take on um, not unfamiliar, that role of a leader, the informal role, almost said unformal, that's not the right word, the informal leadership role, where they begin to create it and then shift the leader's perspective to one where they then begin creating the psychological safety. So psychological safety is an environment of rewarded vulnerability. That comes directly from Tim Clark, his book 4 Stages of Psychological Safety, that we're reading. And what that really means is that it's an environment where both the employee and the organization thrive, because the employee can bring their whole self to work. Because I think we've all been in situations, at least heard about situations if we haven't been in them, where it's kind of a tough place to go into work, and we don't want to risk anything, because being vulnerable is a risk. When we're vulnerable, we're at risk. So that's why we want to reward vulnerability, because for people to bring in those innovative ideas, those high performing ideas, we kind of have to break out of the norm, and we have to be vulnerable ourselves. So when we're vulnerable, we're taking a chance. If you don't reward it, guess what happens? That vulnerability is not going to happen. That chance that they might have taken earlier will not happen. So we want the leader to create that environment. And if they're not creating that environment, informal leadership can create that environment. If the leader does create that environment of rewarded vulnerability, then guess what? The informal leaders on the team can really support and make that environment truly thrive. So when we're talking about vulnerability, and really in a nutshell, putting ourselves at risk, because vulnerability makes us at risk for, whatever, people talking about us, being put down, whatever it may be. So think for a second, what are you at risk on your team? or if you're a team leader or an informal leader on the team, what do you bring to the team that puts employees, team members at risk for being vulnerable? And what happens on that team that allows for that risk? Are there certain things that happen well, certain things that don't? Generally, there is no perfect team and no perfectly bad team either. So just think for a minute, what is that emotional, social, or political harm or loss that I risk if I'm being vulnerable? So the way to answer that is, or the way to ask that question is, in my team environment, am I at risk for emotional, social, political, or economic vulnerability, economic harm? So can I be harmed if I bring my whole self to work? And sometimes that happens. I know one time for me, it was really it was both economic and political harm that would be done, because I had a boss. I won't give his name out, but he was kind of horrific. And anybody that would bring up an idea that was contrary to what he wanted done, it would immediately be just put down. There would be no discussion about it. It was a dumb idea, literally those terms. And that person would then kind of be blocked from any upward motion, upward momentum of the ladder within the department. It was pretty serious, and we all knew it. He actually, we all made kind of fun of him because we thought that he had a list of names that he was going after for people, against people, and we would all joke around where we were on that list. So needless to say, none of us really brought our whole selves to work, and we certainly did not innovate in any great way. And all of us left within 2 years. So all of us were smart enough to have an exit plan, find a new job, and then boom, leave from there. So that's kind of one of the things that happen when you don't have psychological safety. You get a lot of turnover. We're going to talk about that in a moment as well. So this is what happens when psychological safety is broken. 48% intentionally decrease their work effort, their effort at work, kind of like quiet quitting that we just went through, right? And then they decrease their time at work. Quiet quitting sounds like. And 38 intentionally decrease their quality of work. So, that'll work. That's okay. 78% decrease their commitment to the organization, and 12% admit to leaving their job. So this is a type of environment that we have when we don't have a high level of psychological safety. And what we want to have is a high level where those things don't happen, where we have the exact opposite, or even more of the opposite, not just the exact opposite, but 100% of people increase their effort at work. 47% intentionally increase, well, not their time at work, because if we have a psychologically safe environment, we don't want to be spending all of our time at work either. We want to have a good work-life balance, and that's what happens. So the time we're at work, we increase it in terms of our effectiveness at work. And we increase our quality of work, because when you have a team with high psychological safety, guess what happens? The team actually sets the standard, and that standard is ever increasing because we're always getting better, 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 and better. So you don't have to have continuous improvement. You have continuous improvement with psychological safety. So you don't need something else to come in and say, hey, we need to constantly get better. That happens naturally in a team with a high level of psychological safety. And there's a lot of myths about psychological safety. And one of the things is it's about trust. It's not about trust. What's kind of neat about this is psychological safety is felt from a team perspective. So it's felt from a group, and trust is felt on an individual level. So team level is psychological safety. The whole team has each other's back. It's felt on a team level, and trust is felt on an individual level. And if you're a leader, what is the quickest way to gain someone's trust? 3, 2, 1. I bet you already got the answer to this. It is to give them trust, to trust them. So you have to give trust first in order to get it. Just like psychological safety, you want your team to be vulnerable, you have to model vulnerability. And if you're one of those informal leaders, model that vulnerability. And if you get shot down with it, gently build that relationship with the leader so those things don't happen, so we can begin to build psychological safety. And it's not anything goes. You can't just say whatever you want and get away with it, because that's harmful. That's not protecting your team. We can't have just people just saying whatever they want. It has to be grounded in something. And it's not about being nice either, because did you know that most or all psychological teams have some friction? And we need friction. We need intellectual friction and creative friction, because it's just like driving that car, that analogy of driving the car. If you have a great motor on there, but you don't have the friction of the wheels on the road, it's never going to go anywhere. So we always want that friction. And it's not meanness. So it doesn't mean just because it's not about being nice doesn't mean that it's about meanness. It just means that we question each other and we're curious. We always show up with curiosity. That is kind of one of my favorite things to do and say, is show up with curiosity. And how do we do that? So if you're a leader, or if you are an informal leader or a team member, and someone has an idea, don't just judge it. Don't say, hey, good idea. That's a judgment. Bad idea. That's a judgment. Say, oh, that's interest, or that's a judgment right there too. So, okay, so your idea is X. Have you thought about how we can overcome Y with this, or something like that? So always be curious. A great way to be curious is, oh, tell me more. Then they'll explain more. That's one of my favorite go-tos. Tell me more. And then people will simply dive in and they'll start telling you more, as long as you have those relationships built. So it's very interesting how it's all interconnected. And then why do we care? We care because there is so much that is spent on teams when they do not perform. It's kind of incredible. An average team that's not high performing, doesn't have a high level of psychological safety, will waste thousands and thousands, and it adds up into millions and billions of dollars for different organizations. Depends on what organization you are, but it adds up. And let's say, well, why do I care if it adds up for the organization, right? Well, you know what? It takes a toll on me too, because I'm going to want, if I'm in a team, an organization where there's not psychological safety, I'm going to be looking for another job. I'm going to be uncomfortable where I am. I'm going to be constantly on edge, things like that. So that's why we care, because there's a big human toll to this as well. So we want to be caretakers of our team. We want to support and help our team and our teammates. And then here's those 4 stages. Inclusion safety, we're going over this week. Learner safety is next week. Contributor safety is the 3rd week. And challenger safety is coming up in week 4. And that's where we're going to kind of tie everything together and give each other the opportunity to play devil's advocate as well. So what is how is psychological safety built? It's built on respect and permission. And both must rise to reach challenger safety, and both are earned. What do we mean by that? Respect is earned and permission is earned. The only thing that is not earned is our first inclusion safety. That is a basic human right and is given to people as long as they do not intend to do harm. But in order to have learner safety, it's built on respect and permission. Contributor safety, respect, and permission. We'll get into that deeper and deeper as we go. But for our first week, the only one that is not built on respect and permission is inclusion safety. That's the only thing that's not built on permission and respect. That is a basic human right. We're going to go over in the next video how to create that with specific behaviors and actions. And we're going to hopefully try some this week with our team as well. So inclusion safety, here we are, basic human right. And one of my favorite things is diversity is a fact. Inclusion is a choice. That comes directly from Tim Clark's book, where he says diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. So just look at the world. You can't look anywhere in the world where you don't see diversity. Humans, plants, animals, it's a fact. Now it's up to us to create the inclusion, because that's the choice. And the first step to do that is to grant it to people who do not intend to harm. And then from inclusion safety, how do we create it? This is a great, simple way to look at it. AIS. Ask, invite, share. What does that mean? So ask people about themselves. What do you enjoy about coming to work? Ask, where should it be? And that all depends on the relationship you have built. Invite people in. If you have lunch and it's always the same three people and you exclude other people, no, invite people in. That's their role, to invite people in. And then share some of your own story as well, whatever you feel comfortable with. So ask, invite, share. And then I'm going to save those for the next couple of weeks. We're going to hit those in depth so you saw it. So in order to create psychological safety, to reach that peak, so this mountain is our peak, we want creative abrasion. That's that friction I'm talking about. We want constructive dissent. So creative abrasion is creative friction. Constructive dissent, that is our intellectual friction as well. So those are the tires that hit the road to make our car go. And then we have divergent thinking. So we want many other thoughts, many other perspectives in this. And the way to get that is with divergent thinking. We want to welcome, so go back to inclusion safety. We want to welcome, not just welcome, we want to invite different ways of thinking onto the team. We want to make sure that they feel that they're able to express those divergent thoughts. That is hugely important. And then tolerance for candor, because you can't have a team, you can't have psychological safety unless the team has a tolerance for candor. What does that mean? That means people are able to dissent, so constructive dissent, in a way where, so if I put an idea out on the table and it's getting massaged and some people have different ideas and things are coming and going, some people like it, some people don't, some people are trying to figure out why it won't work. All of that is good, and that is a part of that idea. That is not a personal attack on me. And when I try to dissent or shoot down an idea, it's about the idea, not about the person. So I don't make it personal. So I don't make it personal and I don't take it personal. So in that team, you have to develop that tolerance for candor. And a lot of times it's really easy for a leader to do that. And how is it easy to do that? Let people pick your ideas apart and then just be curious about it as a leader. That's what we want to do. So you're role modeling that behavior. Allow people to pick apart an idea, allow people to really play devil's advocate or have that constructive dissent, as we call it here, and then just enter into conversations with curiosity as opposed to, oh, I'm going to push my idea. That's not what we want. And then this is how we have psychological safety on this axis, performance standards on this axis right here. If we have low psychological safety, lots of micromanaging, things like that, and low performance standards, this is what we call the nobody cares zone. That is a zone where people do not care. We've probably gone into businesses where that zone is very evident. So, sorry about that. Let me get back to the final one. We have that. It's very evident. Let's get back to the evidence. There we go. It's very evident when nobody cares. So what happens when nobody cares? People may stay there a long time, but they're not going to do anything. And then if we have high psychological safety, but a low standard, we have a lack of meaning, and people want to have that meaning. So they're not going to be high performing either. But if we have a low psychological safety and high performance standards, we have what we call the anxiety zone. And what happens in the anxiety zone? You get it, lots of ulcers, lots of people quit in both the lack of meaning and the anxiety zone. Lots of turnover happens right here in these two, and one is high and the other one's low. But the nice thing is, when you have high psychological safety, even if you have a low performance standard, the team will bring that up. So you will eventually get into this green zone of high performance. So that is where we want to be. That is the place for us at high performance. So we have high psychological safety, and then as a leader or informal leader, set that standard pretty high and then watch the team take it even further. So this is a high level overview of psychological safety. kind of on a theoretical level. So we're going to dive into inclusion safety and get really hands-on, really practical with what we're going to be doing. But this should hopefully further cement the why. Have a great week. I look forward to talking with you on the discussion boards.